Ever wondered what separates a good drum solo and a great drum solo? What are these drummers that play great drum solos doing that makes us so captivated? I'll tell you straight up, it's not just ripping chops and playing fast things around the kit, as that gets boring quite quickly. I've watched so many drum solos over the years, and I've picked out 4 techniques to show you that will help you captivate an audience with whatever you play. So the first idea is the simplest, and it relates to that whole thing of too many notes is too much. When I sit and hear a drummer chopping out and just continuously playing like that, and it's in the form of a drum solo, it's really cool for like the first minute or two, but the longer that happens, the less interested I get. And that's the whole idea here, because you need to leave space, and the more space you leave, the more you're able to create a story. The cool thing about leaving space is that it is so easy to do. All you need to do is just not play. Here are a few ideas to practice that on the drums. You can leave consistent rests while playing. You could take a moment to pretend you're playing, but you're actually not, and this is always a crowd pleaser. You could do sudden pauses. So if you're playing busy ideas and you suddenly pause, it grips people and makes them think what just happened, and that is a great way of re-engaging them. Moving on, the next idea is one of my favorite things to keep in mind when playing a drum solo, because it covers your butt when you make mistakes. So we all get nervous, we all have anxiety, we all get on stage and suddenly everything we practice just disappears and things happen. You make mistakes, it's part of being a human. So the idea here is, if you make a mistake, do it again, and then do it again. By doing that, you're going to make the crowd think that your mistake was intentional, you did it on purpose, it's part of the drum solo. I saw Corbus do this at a recent clinic that I went to. He did it so well, no one knew he was making a mistake, but I did catch on. But again, that mistake just sounded like it was part of the whole thing. I also learned something else really important from that clinic, but I'll get to that later. Back to this point of making mistakes and repeating them, how do you actually practice that? Well, you just sit on the drums, play, and if you make a mistake, just hone in on that mistake and try and make something from it. Okay, what do most people love to hear when they hear someone playing drums? Is it this? Or is it this? Some people might like the first option more, but I'll tell you that most people prefer to hear a really solid groove. When plebs just think about drumming, they always just think about beats. So your crowd, the plebs, are going to want to hear some sort of beats being played in your solo, because that will always make a crowd pop more than blazing fills around the kit. All of the dopest solos that I've ever heard have some sort of groove built in. Even if the whole solo is not based around a groove, if a drummer places a groove in, that's what makes the crowd think, cool. So here's how you can practice putting groove into your solos. You could try a backbeat solo. So this is when you keep the snare drum on beat 2 and 4 of every bar, and then you work around that. You can play a groove as an anchor, and then you can play around with it, kind of go in and out, but always keep coming back to that groove. So remember how I mentioned Corbus earlier? I actually, when I went to that clinic, learned a really valuable lesson that has nothing to do with drumming, but we can apply it to drumming. So Corbus and I are both from this country called South Africa, and in this country there are several languages that people speak. I speak English, Kobus speaks English, but his native language is actually called Afrikaans. My problem as a person is that I struggle to understand Afrikaans. I'm awful when people speak Afrikaans, and people speak Afrikaans around me all the time. And what happened in that clinic is because Kobus is Afrikaans, he spoke Afrikaans to the crowd for most of it because it's his hometown. Most people understood. He felt really comfortable just coming home and being able to speak his native language. My issue, I couldn't understand a lot of what he was saying, and I just sat there like. However, there were times where he was answering questions and speaking Afrikaans, and he would repeat his answers to kind of drive the point forward. And the more he repeated the answers and the more he said the same things in Afrikaans, I could pick up on words that I understood from what he was saying, and eventually my brain could piece together what he was meaning, even though I struggled to understand Afrikaans. And the exact same thing happens with drums and when drummers play solos. Your crowd are not drummers most of the time. So how do you make them understand drumming? You repeat things. The more you repeat something, the more your non-drummer crowd will latch onto what you're doing, and that will anchor them and it will make them understand your drum solo better, and that keeps them engaged. So here's a few clips of me just repeating something to keep you engaged. So all the points I've spoken about so far are super valid. These are great techniques of building a really good drum solo that people will love to hear. However, I haven't actually told you what to play. So how do you choose what to play on the drums? You need to have vocabulary, which means what you can physically actually do on the drums. And how do you build your vocabulary? Well, I have a drumming ebook called Drum Chops Expanded. It is only $10, and in this ebook I give you a whole bunch of patterns and orchestrations on the drums that all sound really cool. If you want to check that out, the link is in the description of this video. Thanks guys, I'll see you in the next one.